And, the planning, I mean, I think of, I made commercials for a really long time. I would write the commercial. I'd be shooting the commercial. I'd be editing the commercial. What do I need to write down? Well, the stuff I had to write down was to make sure the client was okay with what we were doing, that they were on board. It wasn't that they had to do anything other than just approve the idea, or even do a budget, because it was like they paid this much money to make this happen. I'm budgeting my time. I'm scheduling. The budgeting is how much hours I have of the people to help me. Those types of things. Maybe you're not budgeting to rent anything because you have no budget, but there is going to be some benefit to even small budgeting in that space. Even conceptualizing things makes a big difference. I know for me, if you're trying to do something conceptual, drawing it out helps you understand some of the woes you might run into to help you plan for those woes. Where's the light going to be when you're shooting outside? Those kinds of things really help you so that you can get, you're not going to spend any more time shooting. You just are going to start shooting at a certain hour because it makes sense to what you're trying to achieve. And so I think all of those planning things, all those little details, for some people love planning, and I think sometimes planning comes out of anxiety. I'm anxious about this, and it helps me put that anxiety to rest if I just put it down to paper. And especially if you're not trying to look like a noob or look unprofessional, it's great to be prepared. People love seeing that, even if they're not involved in the preparation you're doing.
So 2 things came to mind while you were talking. One is when you're working with clients, one of the problems that you're going to encounter, going back to the idea that pre-production is about problem solving, is the client's not going to be happy with what you made.
Oh, totally.
So you have to tell them in advance what you're making, and that's part of the pre-production process, and coming to like a conclusion with them on that is definitely a problem solving move.
And that's similar to pitching just any kind of film. I mean, if you're getting funding, regardless if it's $100 or $5 million, that pitch is really important, because that's the thing that is going to get you the money for the project.
Right, and communicate your idea and whatever. But the other thing is pre-production helps you iterate on your ideas, so that you're not just like going out and doing the first thing, because the first idea, like very super rarely, is going to be the best idea.
Yeah.
So if you write it down and then come back to it later, that gives you a chance to have documented your original thought, and then think about some other stuff for a while, and then come back to it and be like, is this still a good idea?
Go ahead.
The other element that I think that is super important that maybe beginners don't think about, because they're the only stakeholder in a project. Like when you're doing the music montage, you are making it and it's for you. Is the fact that pre-production really does a great job of helping everyone get on the same page of what's going to happen and setting expectations for everything. So the less information that is actually written down on paper, the more people have in their head an idea of what's going to happen. And I don't know, in my experience, maybe 8 out of 10 times, 4 out of 5 times, they're different. And both could be good. But then there's this conflict of, you get this thing done and it's like, oh, well, actually, I thought that shot was, going to be a low angle. And it's like, what are you talking about? Like that puts this person in a different perspective than that they should be. And it's like, well, did you agree on that? Is it written down in the shot list that it's a low angle of this person? Like, if you can look at it together, you can make those decisions beforehand. And so when it comes to looking at it at the end of the day, everyone's like, yeah, well, we all agreed that was a low angle shot, and there it is, the low angle shot. And commercials, I always found it really helpful to do this, because there was always a case where it's like someone says, oh, you got to get a shot of this thing. Like, I sell this thing and it's a big seller, make sure there's a shot of it. If you don't put that down on paper, a lot of times it's just missed, or the producer thinks that X is the big seller, but the client thinks Y is the big seller, and you have a conversation about, be sure to put the big seller in the shot. Like, okay, great, we will. Well, are you guys talking about the same thing here?
Right, exactly what and how is it presented and everything like that.
Right.
I think there's a lot of mistakes made sometimes when you think, I'm in charge of this project, I know what's best. And I think that pre-planning really helps you flesh out the good ideas, especially when ego's not as involved. I think ego's more involved in the when you actually achieve something than rather forward thinking, I'm going to shoot this amazingly, you don't need to worry about it. I mean, that's ego, but I don't think you're going to see as many people being that blatant than my work is awesome, or the work I do is awesome, look, is different. And I think that the bringing people together, I know for myself, I'd much rather be part of the team than the coach, for the sake of I like the feeling of us all coming together and making something that's better than any one of us could do on our own. And sometimes that's just by being the extra hands, but other times it's by having those good ideas and making room for those that you are in charge of be able to give input into the project. One will give them better ownership of what they're doing. It'll help them understand what you're trying to achieve more. Plus, you're going to find better ideas than you have in that process. And you're going to be able to go, you know what, that looked really good. And I mean, for me, I try not to like do things that just are going to make me feel good, but rather achieve what I'm trying to do. So you can see the project and love it more because it's not loving yourself, it's loving what we made. You know, those things I think really pay attention, really work. I mean, for me especially, I like to make stuff with people, and I love when the project comes out better than I could have imagined, and almost always that's because of the process of planning and trying to come up with the best idea to do rather than make the best of what we got.
So that process, if you do it in pre-production and you're sitting in a room together with a pen and paper, can be exciting and healthy and non-confrontational.
Totally.
But if you try to do the same exact thing on set, different story.
It's stressful.
It's stressful. You're talking arguments.
Yeah.
And you may actually end up with a product that's worse than either of your ideas were alone.
Just because of the conflict.
Right.
Yeah, and you weren't able to take the time to like reconcile how can these work together? What missing piece do we need to like fill in the gap between these two ideas or whatever, or these two approaches? And yeah, I think that comes back to like iteration, not only from yourself, where you can like refine your ideas, but like allowing other people in on the process requires you to have some way of expressing your idea to them in advance.
Yeah, well, you're likely to be more prepared with what you want to achieve if it needs to be on the boilerplate. Have other people look at it, understand it, and give input versus just going out there, do what I say. Now, don't get me wrong. Some people are amazing artists and they have a vision and that's what they're trying to do, and that is a certain thing. But that's so, you know, the 1 out of 100 people. Everybody else is strength by their team. You know.
Well, even if you're the type of person who is an amazing artist and you do have incredible vision, when it comes time to shoot, depending on the size of the production, obviously. If you don't do the pre-production work, not only do you have to have amazing vision, but you also have to be an extreme micromanager of everyone involved.
Yeah.
You know, you can't trust anyone to do what you need them to do if you haven't done the pre-production to like set everyone's expectations, set everyone's goalposts in the same direction. You know, are you going to want to look over the shoulder of your camera operator for every shot? If not, you better do the pre-production work, get the shot list going, maybe do the storyboards beforehand so that you can leave that work to them and focus on the more creative aspects.